Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Another episode of my news and opinion for the week. And so, we got a couple things I'd like to talk about. A lot of things have devolved. I don't know how to say it. It just devolved. So, I'll talk about Chop is dead. Chop is dead, or Chaz is dead. Whatever it was, it was dead on arrival. It was DOA. Okay. And so I'll talk about definitely talk about Chop. Doesn't have that much life in it. It's on life support. I think Sunday is the last day it's going to be around. Other thing I'm going to talk about is the culture wars. I'm definitely going to talk about the culture war. It's getting more violent. The war is getting much hotter. It's getting a hot war because it's summer. And I'll get into more of that the the mimetic warfare. The mimetic warfare is also getting ramped up. Although mimetic warfare helps to a certain degree, but it is not the end all for a cultural war. You'll need more than mimetic warfare. But we are in mimetic warfare right now, and so but I'll get into that just a little bit later. Then I'll talk about the statues. Man, those poor defenseless statues, huh? Statue lives matter. Statue lives matter. Who? Those poor defenseless statues. Soft, very soft, easy targets for the radical left, the radical extreme left, and the Antifa wannabes. So, soft target. No one's guarding it, or very little protection. It's the statue. Does it mean anything? I think it means more for the radical left than it does for anybody else. But people don't really appreciate destruction of property either way. I think eventually that's going to get very, very old for a lot of people. So I'll talk a little bit about that and potential the counter revolution. So we have a revolution going on, supposedly, right? That's what we're told by the mainstream media. We're told that there is a revolution going on. Well, there probably will be a counter revolution going on shortly. Usually when there's someone or some entity or force or group imposing their will, the counter revolution, the counter movement, is a reaction to the initial movement. So I'll be talking about that. So Antifa versus, or the left, radical extreme left, or the left in general, because a lot of the left wing of this political spectrum or ideology in which we find ourselves in um, is the left versus right wing. Um, is there an opposing force happening here? Probably. I don't think we're in a civil war, but we're definitely in a cultural war. And in order to be a war, you need an adversary, opponent. And so you'll have the left versus right, Antifa slash left, versus the right and the right wing, supposedly right wing militia. Militia groups are probably going to be the major counter movement to Antifa or the radical left. So you are starting to get, I wouldn't say the radical right, and when I say the radical right, I'm not talking about white supremacy as the left tries to put it, and when they say white supremacy, I'm not talking about like neo-Nazis. I'm talking about you know uh, from what I'm understanding, when the radical left talk about white supremacy, they're talking about an organization based upon the foundation of which history has built itself on, mainly on the Western European nations. Uh, that would conclude America being colonized by England, stuff like that, in which this foundation of this country has been built on by basically, for the most part, white men, if you look at history. So with the left, when they say white supremacy, that's what they're talking about. They're talking about the foundation in which this country was built on, which is basically mostly, former British, okay, and that's what the founding fathers are. So when they're not talking about the neo-Nazis, the skinheads that you think about when you hear the word white supremacy. So the word itself is being miscued in a lot of ways. And so when I say right-wing militia, I'm mainly talking about just regular people who are already in the militia. And what you're finding is they're gravitating more towards this counter movement, which will be called the right-wing militia, which is really a whole bunch of people from different backgrounds, whether you're black, white, yellow, brown, orange, green, a lot of people. So there is going to be that movement. And I'll also be talking about the other counter movement that's going on with this whole Black Lives Matter. It's going to be the Blue Lives Matter. The blue flu is going on along with the COVID-19. So I'll be talking about that here and how that movement stemmed from this whole defund the police movement, and eventually I'll talk about community enforcement. So defunding the police is still a thing, I guess, still an attempt, although I think it's going to fail horribly. But community enforcement is going to be a very hot topic here in the coming weeks, and you're going to see both sides, left or right, depending where you are. It is geographic for the most part, even geographic within a geographic location. So I'll be talking about that. And finally, I'll come to more conclusions about the Civil War. I still don't think it'll happen, and I'll try to explain a little bit more why. I'm hearing a lot of people talk about Civil War, but I just don't see anything that will lead to a Civil War. Not yet, anyway. What I need to see is a state secede from the Union. I need a state to secede from the Union. I don't, people talking about how they don't want to be a part of America. That happens every day, 365 days a year since the birth of this country. So that doesn't count as a civil war. All right, so let's get into it. CHOP is dead. All right, it's DOA. I don't know why people are trying to keep this thing on life support. It's totally dependent on on it is on life support. All right, and the mayor Durkin basically gave it a Sunday deadline, so the plug is going to be pulled on CHOP or Chazz or whatever it was. It was just stupid. It basically was, the whole idea was nothing more than pink, fluffy unicorns dancing on rainbows. That's this whole thing. CHOP, Chazz, whatever it was, whatever, it's dead now. There's no, uh, this concept was just literally nothing more than pink, fluffy unicorns dancing on rainbows. So for the people who are a part of it, believed in it, wanted to be something great, they were thinking something like, literally this image here of a pink fluffy unicorn dancing on rainbows. For the rest of America, it looked more like this idea, this crappy drawing of a pink fluffy unicorn dancing on rainbows. It was so adolescent, so immature, so unprofessional and disorganized. Nobody wanted to take leadership of it. No one wanted to take responsibility for it because they probably would have been sued like crazy, and some legal ramifications if anyone took leadership of it. But the disorganization is it was literally it was a joke. Okay, the movement itself has become a meme, and it's become a not a very good meme for them. It's become a meme for the rest of everybody else to make fun of them. Um, and eventually, what this movement became was like this ugly donkey that it devolved into this ugly donkey, supposedly a unicorn dancing on a pink fluffy unicorn dancing on rainbows, which it was nothing of the sort. It was a donkey for the most part, and this is what it became. So that's Chop or Chaz. It's DOA life support. Just take it out of its misery and just kill it. All right. Why torture the community? So, anyways, that's that. Um, Now, regarding the culture war is getting really bad. It is starting to really get bad, and I think it correlates with the election cycle, the election year. I believe that's what's going on. Uh, the culture was always there. I think the polarization um, is getting worse, and there are literally, memes going all over the place. And memes, to a certain degree, they do help. They do pass on ideas, but you're gonna need more than memes. All right, and then this is where I get into the statues. So the Mimetic Warfare has gone from, virtual, like spreading the ideas for other people, and has manifested itself into reality through tearing down statues. Now, these statues are nothing more than soft targets. They don't fight back. They stand still. They don't feel any pain. That's probably why they're targeting statues. I mean, it could be any statue. I mean, any statue, literally. It doesn't even have to be of anybody of any historical significant importance. If it's just a statue in a public place, man, they're attacking statues. All right, because um, statues don't fight back. Very soft targets. Now, does it represent something to everyone? Like, who the statues represent something to the extreme left radicals. Okay, it represents something to them. That's why it's important and for them to tear down the statue. For everybody else, it's just a statue. That's why you're probably seeing most people not really caring, not going out there with their guns and defending. Some have, but you're not seeing the majority because a statue can be replaced. All right, statue can be replaced, and nobody wants to stand guard a statue. All right, but some places are more valuable than others. And then, as you know, I think the National Guard was called in for certain statues, monuments, and those are federal public, and paid for through the taxpayers. So in that sense, some of those are going to be more important. It does mean something to the other counterparties. So that's something to watch out for. How much of these statue tearing downs is going to happen? I don't know. I think it's going to end soon because there's only so much tolerance the public has of tearing down statues, because that's not what the public wants. Depends where you are, but for the general, most public don't want that. And if it's a way to get attention, you're going to get attention. You may not like the attention that you get. So this finally leads me to Antifa versus the militia, left versus right. So the movement of the left is causing a reaction from the right. So you're going to start getting a counter movement here, perhaps through the militia. The militia has always been right-leaning organization, not always, but most of it. And a lot of it will have to relate to the blue flu. I think you're going to see a lot of police involved with the militia, or cooperation with the police with militia. A lot of it stems from defunding the police. If you defund the police, what are these people going to do? You know, you think they're just going to go home and file for unemployment. I think a lot of uh, the police, if they do get defunded, or if not already, are most likely a part of the militia. It would make sense. Civilian militia and law enforcement tend to work together in emergency situations. So this whole defund the police movement is causing a counter movement where you're seeing the rise of militia, and it makes sense because um, people are seeing riots and looting. They're seeing uncivil protest, illegal protest, or just rioting, and the general public, don't like what they're seeing. They're most likely going to be a part of or join a militia to see how they can counter what they've been seeing. And it's thanks to the mainstream media that a lot of people are now fearing. Not that they're cowering, they're fearing what might happen. And so they're getting prepared to combat their fear. And so this is going to be real. And this is where I get into community enforcement. So you're going to start seeing a lot of community enforcement. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, if the police aren't around and all you have is a whole bunch of people with guns, you're going to get community enforcement. Now, some do it better and some don't do it better. Some don't do it well at all. So depending on how affluent your neighborhood is, depends on how good your community enforcement is going to be. So those low income areas, not too many, they're not going to have too much community enforcement. They're going to have enforcement by the local gangs, the local thugs that already probably run these ghettos in these low income areas. But in the more affluent neighborhoods, you're probably going to have a really good organized community enforcement. And depending on where you are, how affluent your neighborhood is going to depend on how good your community enforcement is going to be. And if you ask me, what neighborhood would I be in? I'd probably want to be in a very affluent neighborhood that we don't have to fight each other, no gang territory. That's probably where I want to be. And being well funded, you probably have better ammo, better guns, better organization, better people. So last thing here, civil war. No, we're not in civil war. It may look like we're in civil war. It may actually, appear to be in civil war, but we're not quite there yet. We're maybe in a social decline. But has everything fallen apart? Is the world gone crazy? Kinda, but not all is lost. There is still a state, and as long as there's a state that's part of the union, there is no civil war. So we need a state to secede from the union to have a civil war. Okay? And that's when I'll say, yes, there's a civil war. Until that happens, no, there is no civil war. There's civil unrest. All right? There is, I guess you could say, sectary violence. There may be sectary violence, but there's still a form of a government there. So I'll get into the next week, but let's see what happens. But I'm going to conclude this episode Please like, share, comment. Let me know what you think. Until next time, everyone. Bye bye.